In general, take all your sales calls until demand outpaces your bandwidth. In other words, until you have more calls than you can fit into your day, handle them all yourself. Typically, when you start to get more than, say, 3 to 5 calls being scheduled in a day, that means it's time for help. Instead of bringing on a full time hire, you can instead look to bring on a fractional or commissioned coach, aka a closer. This person acts as an extension of your team, but only takes calls and is not a full time or even a part time employee. You hire them to do one thing and one thing only: take high stakes calls on a project basis. There's no salary, no benefits, no fee to even take the call, so no downside for you. They only get paid an agreed upon rate. In the past, I've offered between 7 to 15% on the deal price if they close a sale, but you can structure it so they only make money on cash collected from a down payment if you prefer. More on this in a second. As a note, in web page copy and on call scheduler forms, always refer to this person as a growth advisor or head of strategy or a lead coach. To the prospect, it should appear as though they are a full time member of the team. For example, don't say, "You'll be meeting with Chris on my sales team." Say, "You'll be doing a deep dive with Chris, one of my expert coaches on staff." Okay, let's look at one example with a few made up numbers here. Let's say that you have a $5,000 offer, right? You've reached capacity in terms of driving, scheduling, and taking calls on your own. So you decide to bring on 2 commissioned closers. Let's say you decide on 10% commission on cash collected. So let's imagine then that closer number one might be able to take 30 meetings per month, one per day. And let's say that they can make 3 sales on average per month. That generates 15,000 in top line revenue, even if your cash collected is a portion, just say 60% of that, that's generated immediately from down payments. They'll collect 10% commission on the 60% of your cash collected, so $900, and you make 8,100. Again, this is totally passive once the lead generation process and the salesperson is up and running. Now let's say you bring on a second closer in tandem as you start to scale further. Let's assume that they have a really good month and they land another 4 sales at 5K a piece. So that's 20K in gross revenue. They make 1,200, but your net before expenses is just over 10 grand. So in this scenario, you're making almost 20 grand a month without taking any of your sales meetings. Okay, now let's assume that you want to build out a team under them. This is really a phase two, where now you can afford to hire those great closers part-time or even full-time. So now it's more about empowering your existing sales team to hire and train more closers beneath them, all of whom are selling and by now probably prospecting on your behalf. Let's say that each of them hire 2 more all-star closers. So now you have 2 lead closers who are more like account executives at this point, and 4 junior salespeople beneath them. And say each of these new hires makes just 2 sales a month. That's another 12K in instant cash right there. So this is how, with a well trained sales team who's ramped up on the value of a program and who knows how to sell using high status techniques, those entrepreneurs that actually are scaled to 30K plus per month are doing it. Now, you'll definitely need to allow for a training or a seasoning period to ramp your closers up. Your closers should not be taking calls until both yourself and they are comfortable positioning themselves as a coach on your staff. In terms of what a training schedule should consist of, it's going to be very front loaded in terms of your time and your energy investment. The way that I've onboarded and trained a sales team for previous high ticket offers consists of the following: a short e-learning program that I designed specifically to walk them through the nuances of my program, followed by a short quiz that they must take following the lesson, followed by 2 test calls with me where I pose as a prospect and then have them sell me on my own offer. I then evaluate how they did and determine best next steps. Sometimes that will mean me sending them takeaways and asking them to go practice for a week before doing another test. Sometimes the person may be ready to go at this point. But again, never send someone out taking your calls until they are totally ramped up on every component of your offer. Because when people ask obscure questions, questions that haven't been addressed directly in training, which they will, this person needs to be able to handle them and to deduce and to use what they know to provide a correct answer. As a note, the principles outlined in this lesson can also apply to regular hiring for pretty much any client-facing team member. Employee training, onboarding, and hands-on indoctrination into your product, your processes, and your systems is an absolute non-negotiable.